พรรคไทยรักไทยนำนโยบายแล้วทำได้ทั้งสิ้นหนึ่งในโลกนี้ต้องทักษิณนำไทยทั่วถิ่นมุ่งสู่จุดหมายโชคดีคนไทยทั้งชาติได้ผู้นำฉลาดวิสัยทัศน์กว้างไกลทักษิณไม่ใช่เจ้านายแต่เป็นผู้รับใช้คนไทยทั้งแผ่นดิน.
Hello and welcome back to the show. We've got a very special episode today, a two-parter on a subject that we've been meaning to cover for a while, and that is Taksin and the Red Shirt movement. And sadly, Samai couldn't join us today, but we do have our honorary third mic, our all-time record contributor. What are we calling you? What's like your pseudonym today? It's up to you.
Okay. Just call me.
What do you want to be called?
Gong.
Gong. Okay.
Yeah.
So Gong, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for being here. So let's get into it. I mean, I've always struggled with Taksin. And just for those who may be unaware, Thaksin Shinawatra was the Prime Minister of Thailand from 2001 to 2006 and is without a doubt one of the biggest figures ever to loom over the country, up there with the monarchy. He was, of course, ousted by a coup, which spawned the yellow shirt, red shirt divide and really defined Thai politics for, well, including when he got elected for decades. Very generally speaking, that divide as well was between the upper class, urban elite, and the rural poor, speaking very generally. And, politically speaking, Taksin is definitely a very complicated character. Like I said, I've always struggled to kind of have a good take on him and his rule. But generally, I want to get your opinion on this, Gong. Generally, I land somewhere around like, he wasn't a great guy, but he was demonized for the wrong reasons. Would you kind of agree with that?
Maybe not for the wrong reason, but for some reasons, because he either can be nice or can be demon at the same time, depending on the benefit he seek.
See, even we don't fully agree, and we're like always on the same page about everything. So.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's get into it, into the life of Taksin, and then next week we'll talk about the Red Shirt movement. Right, he was born in 1949 to a wealthy bourgeoisie family of Thai Chinese business owners, and they were one of the richest families in Chiang Mai, right, at the time?
Yes.
Yeah.
One of them.
And also, yeah, sure.
They have a theater. They have a movie theater.
Yeah, and a bunch of like smaller businesses as well. And also they had like the royal Nat Chiang Mai blood as well, right?
Yeah.
Which is quite significant. I think it was on his maternal side. And if anybody doesn't know, the Nat Chiang Mai family are the former rulers of the Lanna kingdom, which was an independent kingdom from Siam until it was merged later on. So that, this is royal blood going through his veins, right? And actually his dad was an MP as well for Chiang Mai in the 70s, but I couldn't find out much information about that.
Yeah. That his dad was an MP, but not the the main and influential one, just a normal one.
But do you know what party it was or whose side he was kind of on?
Back then it was kind of complicated, even we know what party and what side back then. Maybe from now, maybe it could be misinterpreted, So I think his political life, you could say that he made his own way to politics. Yeah. And we'll talk about that later, that he changed the Thai political landscape kind of significantly forever.
Yeah. But I guess just to go back to his childhood, he went to Montfort College in Chiang Mai. Shout out to my friends who also went there. And he became... Wait, you didn't go there, did you? Not briefly?
No, I didn't go in.
No, okay, my bad.
I didn't.
So he became a police officer briefly after graduating, before going to study in the USA, in Kentucky, and then Texas, where he earned a doctorate in criminal justice, which is pretty ironic given his policing policies, which would come into play later. On return to Thailand, he joined the police again, and then he married, from what I can gather, he married into a high-ranking police family, right?
Yes.
And then like shot up the ranks really quickly.
You could say that, but he's not in the like, what could I say, like main police force in Thailand. No, he's not like a really cop, like a cop. He was a lecturer at the police academy.
That's right.
Like police cadet academy. Like here in Thailand, we have like police cadet. So because the police system, they have been adopted from the military system at first. But I like to add something that he was in the armed force preparatory school, like the pre-cadet school. So that pre-cadet school consists of the 4 forces. The Army, Navy, Air Force, and the police. Unlike internationally, they include police into the armed force in Thailand. So Thaksin got some kind of, you could say that it's a cultural status or cultural capital from those pre-cadet thing, because when you said like you have your what year are you graduated from the pre-cadet thing? So you can tell your friend in your own circle that, okay, I come from the place that can be accepted.
It's like a little club. It's like a little badge of honor.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So like in one way to be elite in Thailand, that one way to earn it is to be
to build your social capital. Yeah,
that's right.
So while he was still a police officer, he decides to get involved in business, and he opens, I'm guessing off the back of his father's capital, he opens and takes over several businesses with his wife, and like a silk shop, a cinema, apartment buildings, and these were all massive failures. And I gather he went into quite deep personal debt at first. And then this is where he really starts to get into his, future career. He starts renting out computers and communications technologies to the police department, where he's actually working, which is pretty sus. And he starts making, some decent money off of that, right? There's quite a clear conflict of interest here, but at the same time, it's pretty normal for Thailand.
Yeah, that's right.
Back in the 80s.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. And so he founded, around this time, it was in 1986, he founded AIS, which is Advanced Info Service. Originally, it was a computer rental company, and today it is one of the biggest communications companies in Thailand. So, yeah. So that was in 86. In 87, he resigns from the police to focus on business, and he gets into kind of anything electronic communication related, right? So like he first made money off of pagers, like decent money from pagers. He also bankrolled a bunch of like lakons, like Thai dramas, which were, I think they were quite successful, right?
Yeah, they were quite successful on that at that time, because like the television, like color television, being popular at that time. So and then like ads and things,
So this is kind of the story of Taksin's life. Like he seems to be in the right place at the right time pretty often.
Right.
And so he kind of grows into this kind of tycoon figure, opening up all kinds of businesses. He ends up getting a TV channel, a satellite company, and this is that vertical integration stuff, right? A private university he opened. I think that was a bit later. And then he opened the telecommunications data company, TOT, which is also a behemoth today, right? And so this is kind of around the time that mobile phones and personal computers come around. He's really the first guy to have investments and to jump on it. And AIS was, I'm not sure, I didn't get a sense of when this was, but AIS became the biggest phone provider in Thailand by quite some way. It was pretty much a monopoly. I think in the 90s.
It was pretty much.
Taksin rises to this kind of big shot tycoon guy, and obviously he's making a lot of political and military connections, which will serve him very well later. And just kind of to underscore this, he invested in all these communications companies in the late 80s and 90s. And so with that explosion of consumer technologies, like I said before, phones and the internet, he made an absolute shitload of money. and gained a shitload of influence as well. Like almost unimaginable. Like we haven't had a comparable technological boom since then in the economy, right? So yeah, most of these companies and these ventures eventually were consolidated into the Shin Corporation, which becomes quite significant later on.
Right.
And then we should really get into his entry into politics. And this is where it all starts to get a bit murky. And I start to struggle to understand it. So he was very close with this guy, Chamlong Srimuang. Srimuang. And he was like, famous for the Black May protests, right? He was the leader who ended up going on TV with Bhumipol and, you know.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, he was a prominent politician, former general. And Chamlong was the head of the Palang Tham party.
Yes.
And they were kind of a populist Buddhist nationalist party, is that right?
Yeah, you could say that.
Something like that.
Because like he believes in like peace, you know, like...
Yeah,
you know,
this
like,
kind of notion, this very conservative Thai Buddhist notion of...
ahimsa. You ever heard that word? Like ahimsa, it means like, you know, like it... Thai people usually compares it with Gandhi's, you know, like something like...
Right. This is like the white shirts which came during the red and yellow shirt shit.
Yeah, like civil disobedience, those kind. You know, Jamlong was into those kind of thing of politics.
Well, it's kind of ironic as well because like a lot of the guys in the party were former military generals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a gimmick. You know, like Thai politics is about gimmick. Was, you know,
Of
back
course.
then.
Yeah. And yeah, so he made Taksin foreign minister in 94, right?
That's
right. That didn't last very long. But I think he got booted after about 3 months, something like that.
Yeah, not a very long time, but that's a big step in his political career.
Yeah. So it kind of thrust him into the spotlight politically. And he ended up being this position, right, of a kind of political power maneuverer, which, to be honest, is really what Thai politics was all about in the 90s, like party hopping, coalition forming, influence sharing, stuff like that, right? So it's important to remember that, like, these are the boom times economically in Asia and particularly in Thailand, and foreign capital is just pouring into the country and it's rapidly industrializing, and those invested in capital are becoming way richer than they could have even imagined. Spoiler alert, it doesn't last much longer. And yeah, all of the parties at this time, they're all the parties of capital. This is the what's it called, the Fukuyama thing. This is the
end of history
era, right? And the only squabbles seem to be about who gets to sit on the throne or under the throne. Sorry. So
the share.
Yeah. So Thaksin manages to become deputy prime minister in the Pat Kwam Wang Mai coalition.
Like New Hope. It means New Hope. Kwam Wang Mai.
And then someone had the bright idea to force the floating of the Thai baht on the foreign exchange markets. Now, I don't even know what that means exactly. I have a vague sense. But, you know, I understand that is how you make Tom Yam Goong. So do you want to explain that?
That's right. Yeah, it's like, I think it's like you try to mess with the exchange rate, you know, between the US dollars and Thai baht. You know, back then in 1997, there was a crisis that the value of the Thai baht is very strong, you know, and it is too strong at some point.
Yeah,
and
because they were doing a lot of exports, right? And that
they were doing a lot of export. Yeah, I think if you briefly go back into some kind of context, you know, like before that, as you can say, that the Thai economy was very boom, you know, as back then, like post World War II, 1947, like the US tried to make friends with us, you know, like to support us to be a capitalist country, and they accommodate and support us to create the like economic council, like National Economic Council that Sarit tried to make the economic and political plans in every decade, like and now so on and on. Like we try to catch with the agriculture and try to export the agricultural products and make some profit about that. Moreover, we, like when we go further, we know that this doesn't really work out because like a country like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, like around us, or maybe in Africa, in South America too, they can do it a lot more than us and with the less cost, in a cheaper, and because we are in a middle income country, right? So our salary is not so high, but it's not that low. But compared to India, Bangladesh, South Africa region, South American, like they were much cheaper, like half cheaper. So they can invest on those country and gain more like profit. So why would they invest on our country? So we have a plan to turn into the industrial country from agricultural one. So at one point, as you said, that the telecommunication business, the business on banking, right? The Sopon Panit family, they were Chinese investor too, and they comes back around from Thailand and China, and also Jelawanon CP, and today's Beer Chang, Chang Beer, that guy too, like they were originated from that time, and Taksin was later in that kind of business. So those elites back then were
You're talking like early 80s, right?
Yeah, from the 60s to the 80s. They were there before Thaksin, and they tried to elevate the status by marrying a higher elite couples. You will make yourself be on the same page or be on the same.
You're talking about literal marriages, right?
Yeah, right. Something like that. So it makes them an elite too. So not only economically, but on a social status quo or whatever. But Thaksin is later, and I was pretty sure that he has the same plan because he married to the daughter of the higher police chief.
I think she was a sister actually, but yeah. So like those things, and he was right. He was right on the right. It worked.
Yeah, it kind of worked. It kind of worked back then. I think if there was a Thai politics textbooks, like the procedure to get into the top of the power, maybe he follows that book. He followed that how-to pretty well, and it's kind of been success, but later it's too much success. So people from their own club try to kick him out because he's taking too much of the cake.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, sure. We'll get to that in a minute. But okay.
But to set the stage with the Tom Yum Goong, which is the financial crash. I don't think I even mentioned that. People why are you talking about soup? But later on, before and after the 1997 crisis, a lot of business people, were crashed and they were broke instantly because of the exchange rate. The value of the baht has been deduct half. Out.
Like a lot. So okay, let's make it easy. Like a lot of people going poor, but not Taksin. He's like 2 times richer, like at least 2 times richer from that. Looks like double his money.
Well, whenever there is a crash, there's always a certain class of people who do get richer from the crash.
Yeah, and you think there will be someone to tell him like when to buy and when to sell, that mechanism.
We can talk about that as well because Suthep, quite early on, Suthep, who we'll get into in the next episode probably, who was a long-time adversary of Taksin, in 97, Suthep accused him of profiting from insider information from that decision to float the Thai baht on the exchange markets.
I didn't even know it was true or not, but he's kind of very rich after that. So he stand up like a lot of people go back home, like a middle class, like me, who work in Bangkok and have the hometown in the northern part, northeastern,
Yeah.
or the south. Like they have to go back home to do self-sufficient
Go
economy.
back to the farm. That's what happened. I think we should really try and underscore this. Like after the crash, like it was unbelievable devastation. Like compared to say the 2008 crash in the West, like this was way rougher than that. Way rougher. It was unbelievably devastating to, like you say, middle class, lower middle class people who had really just about that even that class was quite a newly formed class, right? There hadn't really been a well-established middle class in Thailand until not too many years before, and then it was kind of like wiped out overnight. And you would see like I wasn't there at the time, maybe you can tell us, but like you would see middle class people just selling everything from their home on the street before they moved back to the family farm or something like that from Bangkok, right?
Yeah, because like things were like worthless, Like if you've been to Sathorn, you will see like Sathorn unique building. Like that building was beautiful.
Famous,
but
abandoned building in Sathorn.
Yeah, it's been abandoned until today. Yeah, and
it's like the most expensive area in the whole country.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you will see like ironically you will see like iPhone ads, like a very big iPhone ads one like attached to that building, like with the abandoned one. Like it's kind of ironic.
Okay, so after the Tom Yum Goong crash, Taksin takes a very short seeming break from politics. He joins the Carlyle Group. I just want to briefly mention that because he did 9/11. If you want to look into the Carlyle Group and their connections to maybe the Bush family and the Bin Laden family, something to look into for our inquisitive listeners. But this is really cementing his businessman, influence peddler status overseas, joining the Carlyle Group, which is just Google it. I don't want to do a whole thing about the Carlyle Group. They terrify me. Also, this podcast is also funded by the Carlyle Group. And and so he returns. I don't know if he actually left, but he returns to Thai politics, and he founds the Thai Rak Thai Party. Now, this is an incredibly important political party still today, and I think the best way to describe it is it's kind of like quite a big, broad coalition. You have two main components in at the top of the party. You have kind of two main components. One is people like Taksin, the very wealthy, typically well-connected and politically experienced kind of class. And then he also brought in a bunch of the old comrades from the communist insurgency to help him with policy, right? I've got that right, yeah?
Yeah. Like Mr. Phumtham Vechayachai, he was a key person, but until now, he's still in the key person of him.
So there was this kind of very strange alliance between these two kind of camps in the Thai Rak Thai Party. And you have to remember the communist insurgency ended in 89, right? So
83.
They're kind of looking for their place in politics, the former leaders of this insurgency. And seemingly Thai Rak Thai or Taksin, he kind of said to them like, look, you help me design policies for the rural working class, for the rural peasants, and I will carry some of them out for you, and they took that deal.
Yeah, but because I think there are fractions in the Communist Party, back then. Like if I could just put that way that like Thai Communist Party was not Marxist but Maoist.
Yeah, well, Marxist, Maoist, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. It was organized. Firstly organized by the Chinese Communist Party. So it's not really like a textbook, like leftist.
It's not like it wasn't an organic, compared to some of the others in the world.
Yeah, some of them want to form a proper party and be in power by election, but some of them want to use the forest strategy. If you ever heard like ป่าล้อมเมือง, like forests surround the city or something like that strategy. But some of them do want to form a party no matter what, and it seems like they have no choice right after they went out of the forest, and some of them were sent to the United States and grant fund to study PhD doctorate and comes back to be a professor. Some of them were like be in some business sector, and some of them still have a dream to be politicians, and maybe
some are the fucking vice speaker in the parliament is a former comrade, right?
Yeah. Like a lot of them were former comrade. Now they either be in the conservative side, like a very like maybe you call them like authoritarian side, military side. And some of them are still in Thai Rak Thai Party and now Pheu Thai Party, and they were like pro-capitalist, like neo-liberalist party, and they still were in that because they were not kind of really into economic, like system or economic determination.
I think there's this kind of important, I think like maybe some people will be quite confused of how that kind of ended up happening, but I kind of want to throw this concept out there for people who might not get it, which is that of like the embarrassed comrade, the embarrassed communist, right? Like the Thai Communist Party was so utterly defeated and the movement was so utterly destroyed that those who were granted amnesty, who survived the insurgency, really came out of it feeling like we've just wasted 20, 30 years and they were humiliated, right? But they still were, quite well educated, quite in touch with the people, if you like, and they wanted to use that, and they abandoned the dream. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It's like one of your comrades, saying that the former deputy prime minister, he was in the forest too. He was a member of the Communist Party, and he said like, oh, now he's not the leftist anymore, I would say that he was never a leftist, He was never, because like back then people were like teenagers, and they go into forest because they don't have any choice, but maybe they were not into like economic equality or economic like all of the leftist ideology at all. Maybe they were never into that, but they did that because of their struggle, and they want some place in Thai politics. But now later on the Thai Rak Thai Party, it was a new party, right? But it's a new party with the new leaders, without like I wouldn't say without, but with less consequences from the old party, like the Thai Democrat Party, or Palang Tham or Khwam Bang Mai, because there were those.
It was
parties,
a clean slate, right?
Yeah, something like it was quite clean. So maybe they think it is a great opportunity to design the policy, as you said, like, and some policy were like universal healthcare. It was like a village funds,
And the debt moratorium as well is quite important for farmers.
And this is like, I think these are similar to what you would call it socialist policy.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So it is okay. So maybe you work with Taksin, and he is a capitalist with a neoliberal mind or whatever, but you still get these policy done. So maybe with the name of the capitalist leader like Thaksin, but you can still have your own policy and be a key person who determine how the future of Thailand would be. So it's worth it. Maybe
it
they
is,
think it's
and
worth it.
in their minds, yeah. And I wanted to kind of make a secondary point, which is that for the, God, how many years would it have been? So the revolution was in 32, so it would have been like 60, 70 years. In the 60, 70 years since the revolution, since 32, there hadn't been anybody who really tried to activate the peasant working class or rural working class in a parliamentary political way. Nobody had really appealed to them before, right? And the genius of Thai Rak Thai was, these people can vote, and if we give them policies that they want, like the ones you just described, they will vote for us, and there are a lot of them, and they'll be a reliable voting camp or whatever, and it's genius. You know, it worked perfectly, and in 2001, Thai Rak Thai obliterated the opposition in their first ever elections, which was the national election. And you know, it's actually really worth looking at the electoral map. I put it on that doc that I shared with you. Like, you can see the rural areas are just red. You know? And even Bangkok, actually, like large areas of Bangkok went for Thai Rak Thai as well.
They won 248 out of 500, so it guarantees them to be a government. You know,
bearing in mind there's like not one opposition party, but like fucking 20 other opposition parties, which are all divided.
They're sure there will be coalition, but they have succeed from that. And you know, like at first, I would like to add that it's not. He was not a populist at first, you know, like he doesn't really play on the popularity game with the people, you know, like at first, before the 2001 election, you know, his election campaign was about the policy, like the serious one, like how to transform Thailand, how to reform Thailand out of the bureaucratic polity, like bureaucracy state, into the more like democratized and will be like more fair to the
more
economy.
Egalitarian.
More egalitarian on both economic and political side. You know, like because back then, as we said, that like the business elite were like try to incorporate with the government in order to monopolize those resource and power with them. You know, but Thaksin, maybe I think he knows how to conduct his mission, you know, not only just to gain, but, you know, like maybe not lie to the people, but maybe I'll use this word, like throw them a bone. Like throw them a bone to let them know that, okay, if you vote for me, you know, you'll get something, maybe not all of it.
Something material as well.
Something material, something tangible that you can touch, you know, like maybe you're like 20% richer, but you feel like, okay, at least it's better than nothing than before.
And the really wild thing is that like no one had done this before. It's so wild, you know? And this is in 2001, you know? Someone finally thought, oh, let's actually give people something if they vote for us, something material.
You know?
So I also wanted to ask you, Gong, like, do you remember when this happened? Like in 2001, like you were around, you were in the north as well, actually. So, kind of, what was the atmosphere like for like? I mean, I guess for your family, I'm assuming here a little bit, but like, you feel like, oh, we finally got one of our guys. We finally got someone who represents the north, who represents the.
Yeah, they thought that, but sadly, because back then I was only 5 years old.
Okay.
So I couldn't remember that much, but I remember my dad told my mom that, we are from the north, so we have to vote for the northern people.
Right.
You know, like something like that, and they vow for like the new politics that haven't been like something like that before. You know, like so a lot of policemen goes for Taksin because Taksin was a former policeman.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, like and then
so there was like a big identity politics aspect to this, right?
Yes. Definitely. Yeah, definitely right. You're definitely right because he got a lot from the north and the northeastern, but back then he haven't even played the populist politics yet. You know, like back then he wasn't go and eat, you know, dinner with the villagers like you know, like batu, like the fish, the fried fish, the small one. Yeah,
the
you know,
ones,
like that one was a village food, not for.
And I heard that shit gives you cancer, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, you know, like that thing. You know, and he tried to be down on earth with those people, you know, ride a motorcycle, you know, like those things.
But that was later. This was just pure politics.
It was like
pure policies.
Pure policy. So can you imagine in the next 4 years when he get reelected? Like no one, you know, like this is the first government ever that has been in power in full term without like any coup or any
Well,
resignation.
I wanted to get onto that. So let's talk
Yeah.
about what actually happened while he was in power. So I just want to like throw out some of the policies, starting with economic policies. So you mentioned the village managed microcredit development funds. Those are really important because it's very rare that you get any decentralized policies from Bangkok to the rest of the country. And
Right.
this was kind of grants, relatively small, but significant in some communities, grants, which were the communities were allowed to spend however they wanted, which, I think that's a great policy. There were very low interest, like meaningless interest, agricultural loans, which is also very important for the farming vote. There was just like the direct injection of cash into village developmental funds. That was a SML scheme, right? There was massive infrastructure development. So he invested, I've got it somewhere here. Yeah, $50 billion in infrastructure, which is quite astonishing. And again, like a lot of that is outside of Bangkok, which historically has not been invested in. There's also OTOP, one Tambon, one product.
Yeah.
Which is, I never really understood the significance of OTOP.
Because when it is a centralized state, everything has been produced at somewhere. Maybe not in Bangkok, maybe in Rayong, maybe in a factory somewhere in Lamphun, Chiang Mai. And they distribute it. And the people in the local area, like in Tambon is mean like a district, like sub-district.
Yeah.
They don't have any product of their own, so they have like less money, and they have to buy an expensive stuff from the big company.
So it was about localizing production.
Localizing things. So he give 1 million for Tambon. Maybe 1 million, not Tambon Muban, village. Like Thai village is not like in the UK. It's like a very small one with the leader of the village. They said like Pu Yai Ban, You've heard of that.
Village leader.
Yeah, the village leader, something like that. So they give like 1 million to one village. Like design your own product.
Baht, you mean?
1 million baht, yeah, not US dollar. That's too much. Yeah, it's like 1 million baht. It's like what, like $30,000.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah,
and I guess that's also helps to like diversify the economy as well and kind of spread the wealth a bit, right? And also that would help keep people in the local areas, and it means they don't have to go to the big cities for work, which I'm sure would be greatly appreciated by a lot of
so you
people.
build your own product, anything you can from your local materials, from your local wisdom. This is very important. Let your wisdom out, and then he create a market in every tambon, every sub district, so people can exchange things from their local. So this is not only the mechanism that he used for his election. Not in the past that the government always used these like a village leader mechanism to buy votes, to put it in a simple way. Literally. But maybe Taksin does too. Who knows, right? But
maybe we can get into that. Later.
but not only with the money. Because,
through policy.
Yeah, but through policy, and people happy about that. And maybe vote buying is becoming Thailand's political culture. So whether you're giving money or not, they still go to vote someone they like anyway. So this is not empirical data, so we cannot determine what is right and what is wrong. But, I would like to add, from, you might call it like leftist perspective, but Thaksin, maybe he conduct policies like universal health care or village loan, SML, small and medium loan, maybe this is like, it looks like it's kind of decentralized policy. But the thing that is been emerged is maybe in the textbook it called petit bourgeoisie.
Right.
Yeah, like the
so this is like this was his kind of thing, right? It was like, I'm going to make people little entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
Like on one side, it kind of sounds like quite leftist decentralization, but then at the other time, when you look at it quite in more detail, it kind of it's creating this entrepreneur class from the former typically peasant rural.
Yeah, so poor people is not only a working class, but at the same time they were little entrepreneur. So they have two stands, not a working class. So they will not, like Marx said, like be in a union to fight together. But, they are capitalists at the same time and also a working class. So, it's like, it's like the status that they cannot move anyway.
It's a bit sus.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk about some of the... Oh yeah, sorry. Also, one more thing. There were a bunch of free trade agreements with other countries like China and Brazil, and this was quite a big deal. And I want to talk about the effects this had more generally on the Thai economy, because GDP grew from about 5 trillion in 2001 to 7 trillion in 2006, which is quite astonishing. Isan income rose by 46% between 2001 and 2006, which is incredible. Nationwide poverty fell by 10%. Thailand repaid all of its debts to the IMF 2 years ahead of schedule. The stock exchange repeatedly outperformed other markets in the region, which it wasn't supposed to. And also after the fiscal deficits from 2001 and 2, Taksin completely balanced the books. He balanced the national budgets, and then had a surplus in 2003, 2004, 5. What else? Oh yeah, also public sector debt fell from 57% of GDP in 2001 to 41% in 2006. So I mean, this is an economic miracle. In everyone can agree, right? Whether you think it was like appropriate or not, or he did it the wrong way or not. I mean, in capitalist terms, this was an economic miracle.
Right, sure. Because like there was a word from Pasuk Pongpaichit. She said like Thailand boom and bust. It was boom before the 1997. It was bust in 1997 and afterward. And then like Thaksin makes it boom again. And who knows, like in the region, in Southeast Asian region, they were like all busted. But Thaksin make Thailand boom. So they will name him like a knight, like the like a third wave knight.
Yeah. And I think this is something I wanted to bring up, which is that he also did a lot of privatization of nationalized industries, right? And this is a real third wave kind of policy. In some ways, it almost seemed to me a bit like Thatcherism, in that he managed to get this big economic bounce. But he did invest a lot in like infrastructure and stuff like that. But I think a lot of it was he was able to do that from the privatization money made, the short-term money made from privatization. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, so some company has turned it. Not some company. The government unit has turned to state enterprise. Like you were mentioned TOT before, and the electric thing. The electrical
companies.
Electrical company. So like that's why Thai Airways people and electric companies people and TOT people hate Thaksin so much, because like he privatized their company. It makes them less stable with their bonus, with their welfare and things. So that was the beginning of Thaksin's downfall, because like he was doing too much for himself. Like,
don't piss off the middle class.
Don't piss off the middle
Bangkok
class
as well.
Yeah, piss off the middle class in Bangkok, and like the villager from the suburb, from the rural area was not always in a stable, because they were also a little entrepreneur. They were not a working class, and you don't pay them a good deal of the welfare as well. So you only have the universal healthcare. That was the only thing that you give to people.
Yeah, let's quickly mention that. It's not quite universal healthcare, but it's very close to universal healthcare. It's a 30 baht program.
Yeah.
So what that is like the maximum amount of money you'll ever pay at the hospital is 30 baht.
Yeah.
So how much is 30 baht for our Farang listeners? That's like less than $1, right? So
it's $1.
It's $1.
Now.
Okay.
It's $1. Like half pound something.
Okay. Yeah. So that increased healthcare access in the country from 76% of the population to 96%. So pretty much covered everybody other than those living in incredibly remote areas.
Yeah, and that's also the capitalist way of thinking, because like he wants,
it's not universal.
Yeah, he want people to feel like they participate. only 30 baht, anybody can buy it. But if it's free,
It's not a handout.
Yeah, it's not a handout. You just pay,
Yeah.
but you pay a little. That's participation,
It
engagement.
is so fucking clever. So we've got to talk about the war on drugs, because this is, for me, the nastiest element to Taksin. We've kind of covered the, if you like, good stuff, but this is pretty brutal. So there was a massive rise in drug use after the Tom Yum Goong crash that we mentioned before. As you can imagine, once the economy tanks, drug use always goes up. And Taksin made this campaign to, quote, rid every square inch of the country of drugs in 3 months. And I think the best comparison would be Duarte in the Philippines recently. Like, it was a very similar kind of situation. So he increased the severity of punishments for drug offenses and basically hyped up all of these local police commanders, like really hyped them up. Like he gave them like arrest quotas and stuff like that. And when you have high arrest quotas as well, he just flooded the prisons with very, very low level drug users, or just people who got caught up who had nothing to do with anything. And then there was also according to Human Rights Watch as well, apparently there were 2,275 people who were extrajudiciarily, is that right? Extrajudicially executed.
Yeah, something like.
God damn it! Yeah,
something too much. Okay.
I know I don't want to laugh because this is very sad and very evil and very tragic.
No worries.
But yeah, 2,275 people were killed, approximately.
Yes.
According to Human Rights Watch, during this crackdown. And this is interesting because really, I think this targeted the underclass, so those who literally do not vote, right?
They do,
because
but sometimes even in the south, Tak Bai.
Right. Well, we can talk about. I was going to.
Yeah. Okay.
Tak Bai is next on my list.
Okay.
Do you mind if I go on a little bit about this?
Sure. No worries. Go on.
Because I have this. I don't know. I might be completely wrong about this, but I have this theory that there is this mentality about working class families, those not on welfare or not on much welfare, and this concept of, look, hey, I work, I and then there are these people below me who are making society worse, who are taking drugs, who are committing crimes, and I'm poor, they're poor, but they're the ones who aren't being poor in the right way that I agree with. And this seems like it was a punitive measure on them, which would win some support from his base, which was that working class. Am I right? I haven't read this anyway, so just a theory.
Yeah, it's kind of right, but it's not from the poor people. It's from the middle class people. That perspective, there were poor people who commit crime, who selling drugs, and they make the society worse. But not from like the working class.
Okay.
That's what I believe. I was not sure too, because I think
I don't know. I'm just going off my own experiences.
I think in the Western countries, especially on Europe, there were that kind of problem. Because maybe it's about the identity issue as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm poor, but I'm white, but you're poor, but you're black. You're yellow. Something like that. But in Thailand, maybe you're Chinese. But not much on the discrimination like that. Not the systematic discrimination. So maybe they are, but they're less. That's what I believe.
I was wondering, do you remember this drugs crackdown? Do you remember the atmosphere around it or anything like that?
I saw him on TV, and he was using it in the education as well. I remember that I draw a picture my art teacher told me to draw a ghost picture with a drug. And tell us that you will become a ghost if you sell drug and use drug, and try to make art everywhere about if you use you die, if you sell you're in jail, something like that. There was a motto about that, kind of die because of drug is bad, and the most important motto is love king, take care of your family, and fight drugs. Like 3 elements of Thailand back then at that time.
I mean, was this like a manufactured moral panic?
Yeah, kind of.
Like there weren't like from your I don't know, like I'm just trying to get a sense anecdotally, like were there masses of like junkies on the streets and stuff like this, or was it just kind of hyped up by the media?
But maybe I live in the urban area, so I don't see that much. But maybe in the more of the rural area, maybe I was not living in the Bangkok those days, but I still live in the urban area of my province. So maybe the very rural area, maybe there are,
Okay.
Maybe there are.
I also wanted to mention, you and I were talking about the United Nations investigation into this, and there was that big slogan. What was it?
Like, UN is not my father?
Yeah, Taksin said UN is not my father.
UN is not my
kept
father.
getting kind of mad at him for, killing low-level drug users for no reason.
Yeah, that's right.
And there was this supposed to be this big UN inquiry. Right?
Yeah.
I can't remember how it ended up.
Yeah, so it just like he just said UN is not my father, because when in Thai language, when you said someone is not my father, it's like, I don't care, who the hell are you to tell me what to do, to teach me, it's not my father, because like Thai people worship their father and mother, right? Yeah, it's something like that. And it just ended up like he has the low like level and ranking of the of being democratic. His government has been accused for like authoritarian, and the word police state has been used in the news headline back then at that time. And you know Hugo, the singer. The singer, he has comment back then about Thaksin that now our state is like a police state. It is not lively, and then later on the Panthamit yellow shirt protest, which will go on next, that he joined the Panthamit once, and
I was
then
going to
later,
say, he's a Salim, or he was a Salim.
Yes, and then he later he said he disagreed because of the coup and things, and that's.
Well, that actually happened to quite a lot of people, to be fair. Well, that's for next episode. So I just wanted to mention one more thing about the war on drugs, and we will get back to it in a bit more detail. But Rama IX, King Bhumibol, was very supportive of the policy, if I recall, which I think is quite significant. So the other thing we really have to talk about is how Thaksin's administration treated the Deep South, so the Pattani, Narathiwat, Yala region. And this is really the mass resurgence of violence in the region, which started in around 2001. And I would say that this, like you just described, Thaksin was seen as quite an authoritarian, quite a police state kind of guy. I'm sure people in the South, in the Deep South, would concur with that. They were really these kind of insurgent, and at the time they weren't so insurgent as compared to later. It was a relatively, am I right in this? It was like a relatively small uprising in 2001 when it started, but it was punished very brutally.
Compared to later, I mean, yes, but
exactly.
but there were a conflict in the Deep South,
Sure.
way before. But I think
Thaksin made it worse, to be honest.
Yes. He admits it.
Yeah.
He himself admits it, that at first he was informed about something happens in the South, and he was on the media and he said like those were like scumbag or something, like John Krajok, like low class terrorists, something like that. And he was like, okay, like let's fight them. And one of his soldier back then fired an RPG into a masjid.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
That's a mosque, by the way.
Sorry. And he was like, I didn't I didn't order that action, but like who
he created the culture under which that action was going to happen.
Yeah, right.
The conditions, rather, I should say, as a good Marxist. So there were a few kind of important incidents. There was a storming of Crusade Mosque in Patani, and that was like, I think there was an attack by the insurgents, and then they fled back to the mosque, and they were hiding out in the mosque, and then the local police or military commander sent people in, guns blazing, and everybody wound up dead. It was a really bloody incident, which led to the Takbai incident, which we've we've discussed all of this stuff on our Patani episode, which you should all go and listen to. With your I should bleep that. There was Takbai. I can't remember how many people died. It was around 80, right? And that was
a lot. It was a lot.
A peaceful protest at a police station, and the police broke up the protest, mass arrested a couple hundred people. Some of them they threw in trucks on top of each other like sardines, and a bunch suffocated, and some others were left tied up on the beach, and the tide came in and they drowned. And I'm pretty sure no one was ever charged for those killings. There was also just another example of some of the persecution of Muslims in the Deep South. Muslim lawyer Somchai Nilapajit was disappeared. He was abducted and killed by the police for his role, defending alleged insurgents who had been tortured. So there was this kind of like culture of really strong repression in the Deep South. Brutal and strong repression, and
it elevates the conflict in the South as well.
Absolutely,
and everybody knows that it gets worse because of his policy styling.
And then even after he's gone, things calm down a bit.
Things come down badly, and like his opposition. The Thai Democratic Party, and even the military coup, like after 2014, they didn't handle it well. They
handled it better than Taksin.
Yeah, but it gets worse.
Yeah.
You could say that maybe it's better than Thaksin at that time, for sure.
At least, I mean, it's still look. It's obviously horrific as well, but it's not. Taksin was really awful. To the Deep South. And you know what is, they I don't know if I want to bring pure Machiavellian politics into this, but I think for him, the people in the Deep South were quite a decent punching bag, or like a boogeyman or something like that, because they were so distant from his base of support. I mean, if you look at the map where Thai Thai were successful, there are no Thai Thai in red, right? All the other, so there's no red dots in the South, particularly in the Deep South. He had no support down there anyway, so I don't think he would gain much by making peace, because there's also this rise of Islamophobia at the time internationally, which spreads into Thailand, because this is post 9/11. So I think this is quite significant, and also on that we should mention that he also sent troops to Iraq. Not many, but he did send troops.
Right, because of his friend, in the US.
His good friends in the Carlisle group.
Right.
So something else we have to talk about is his relationship with the military and the monarchy. I don't think we want to talk about his relationship with Rama IX, Bhumibol, too much, although they were very friendly at the beginning. I remember talking to a friend of mine who says they're a bit older, and they were probably around 14, 15. They remember seeing Taksin and Bhumibol together on television and thinking oh, thank God, everything's going to be okay in the country for my future. God, they didn't know what was coming, but there was this kind of sense of unity between the royalist camp and this reformist at the time, Taksin camp, at first anyway. And I think another thing to remember is Taksin was very friendly towards Rama X, who is the current king, Vajiralongkorn. Famously, he buddied up really tightly to him, envisioning a kind of future, as Bhumibol was very elderly at the time. We don't want to get into this too much for fear of going to prison. So let's expand it a little bit. I know you wanted to say something about his relationship with the military.
Yes, because he has a cousin, as I mentioned before, that he was in the armed force preparatory school, like pre-cadet school, and he has a lot of friends. So he has his connection. So when he become the prime minister, he just want to stabilize his position, right? So he brought his friend into the big, like a key person in the army, navy, and air force. So he is the 10th. Like what do you call it? Maybe a class of the. It's like a 10th class. Like when the first one, they don't count it by year. It's not like in the UK that you say
okay.
class of 2017. Not like that, but it's
no.
Like the 10th generation of the class. Like year 10th. Something like that. Yeah. So
he brought his school buddy, who's now a military big shot, into the.
So, but everything should go on as planned, but before he got coup in 2006, right?
Spoiler alert. Yeah,
and he brought General Sonthi Bunyalathkalin, the different Sonthi from the
different Sonthi,
different Sonthi, and because General Sonthi is Muslim, so he believes that he will use General Sonthi as a Muslim to ease the conflict in the Deep South. That's what he believes, and he doesn't know that I would not use the word betrayed because mostly things in Thai politics has been set up, right? Yeah. So he knows that he's gonna be cool, but he tried to fight anyways, but it's not working out. So it just
I think. People really need to go back and listen to the other episode you were on with us about the military to kind of get this sense of this. There's always this power play between any elected government and the military, and the threat, the coup guillotine is always like hanging, ready to drop down. And I think, and Taksin was the first guy to see out a full term as an elected prime minister without being couped. So he was very, in that sense, he was very successful in dealing with the military for his first term.
So maybe it's like a turning point. It's like
people thought it was. Like at the time,
the one last
wow,
thing. He did many things that displeased Thai elites and conservative, right? Like try to decentralize power from Bangkok to the rural area, to have the healthcare policy, like a SME loan and everything, and that was terrible for Thai elites. But for the military, he put his cousin to be the army chief. That was out, that was crossing the line for maybe the General Prem Tinsulanont. He was like the big army in the country, and there was a rumor that every time you will put someone into the army chief position that you have to consult him, and Thaksin did not. So that was like the turning point, like the.
Well, I think this is something we got to get onto, which is how the right wing perceived him. And I mean, I can't. People talk about like these political divides and the animosity between them, and how much liberals in America hated Trump, or how much conservatives in America hate Biden, or whatever. The disgust from the Thai elite towards Taksin is, I would say, well even above that hatred of Trump. Like, they despised him with all of their soul.
Sure, because it's not only the thing that they lose their privilege or benefits, but there were some kind of media, civil society that tried to demonize him, like you said before, like see him as an evil, and even Thailand has the a very, very strong beliefs about how things were. If they see someone as an evil, they're gonna try to explain that he was some kind of evil in the last life, in the myth of Thailand, and he was reborn again as Taksin, and you have to kill him, you have to get rid of him in any ways, his family and his stuff. So, but
it's kind of ironic because the last famous guy called Taksin who ruled Thailand as well was king who went mad and they had to get rid of him. So there's also this weird kind of thing hanging out.
Oh yeah, King Taksin.
Yeah,
they pronounce quite similar.
I know, but
you know, something like that. Yeah. So, and it was coincident, or maybe it's just a conspiracy theory that, you know, like King Taksin was gone mad, you know, and then like, okay, because this guy named closely to King Taksin, so he's Taksin, so he's a bad guy too. You have to get rid of him too.
I've literally heard this kind of shit before, you know.
Yeah, like okay, King Taksin may get reborn as Taksin, like. You know, like,
and he has basically the same name, so it must be true. Yeah,
that's right. So that I think that's one reason that's why conservative in Thailand hates Thaksin so much more than like American hates Trump.
Yeah, Biden. I think like even in another sense, like there was this kind of perception that when he sort of, even in the first election and the second, he gave these policies for the rural working class, and that was seen as like cheating. Like, oh no, that's not fair. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to. You're buying. They would say, you know, vote buying. Sometimes they meant it literally, but at the beginning they didn't. They meant like, oh, you're just buying them votes by giving them stuff they want, and it's like, that's how democratic politics works, guys, you know. But they really saw it as cheating, you know. Like that wasn't a fair thing to do, to gain votes by being popular and giving policies that people wanted.
Don't say it out loud. You're breaking liberal people's heart, you know. But
like there really was this fury at him for bringing this rural poor voice into politics, or bringing this rural poor people into the political spectrum at all. They really despise that, and they still do for you know, other people who try and do the same thing.
Right. So yeah, it's kind of that.
So and that should kind of bring us on to the 2005 re-election, and what's happened? Thaksin has got an even bigger win, no less the biggest win for any political party in Thai history. He absolutely, or Thai Thai absolutely swept pretty much the entire country. So like, I'm looking at the map now, and it looks like pretty much everything above Prachuap Khiri is red, other than, I think that's Tak, and then I don't know, a couple other spots. Like, I think there's like 5 non-Thai Thais in everywhere north of Prachuap Khiri, which is like the vast majority of the country, right? Like, he absolutely swept the opposition away in the elections, and you know, like we said before, this economic recovery that I spoke about at the beginning when we were talking about his policies, that really was behind that, right?
Yeah, that was behind that, and at the populist politics that he's been played to, you know, like a word like "I give it all to you," "I belong to you," or, you know, this is very touchy, "I am the mechanism which can translate the will of the people into state action." You know, words like this. Words like this, and he go down like riding motorcycle with the people, you know, eating dinners, eat that small fish, fried fish, you know. And when there was a chicken disease, like a H5N1 something, you know.
Bird flu.
Yeah, he just go to KFC and buy chicken and eat them in front of the camera, in front of people. You know, like, so people can be confident that, okay, I can still eat chicken if it's fried. You know, so it's like that. So he gives confidence to the people, that makes the stability. And then more than that, you know, on the bad side of the maturity, like over maturity wins, that the opposition cannot put on the non-confidential discussion on the parliament because they don't have enough of the MPs. You know, so
wait, can I just ask about his populism? Did he ever speak in like Kham Mueang or Lao or anything like that?
Yeah, he speaks the northern language, Kham Mueang.
And he would do it like publicly?
Yeah, publicly when he went back to Chiang Mai. So he said, like,
I mean, that would be so endearing to people.
Yes, yes. Like, Chiang Mai still red until today. You know, you see that taxi in Chiang Mai, it's still red because it is red.
Yeah, it's funny, like when there's been some protests I've gone to in Chiang Mai, you know, I talked to my neighbor and I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit nervous or something, and she's like, oh, don't worry, all the police in Chiang Mai are red shirts, you'll be fine. You know?
Yeah, and they try to penetrate that for now, but it's not really working out. But still,
we can get onto it.
Yeah.
So he just won this massive majority, up the populism, gotten even more popular, great economic recovery or whatever, however you want to describe capitalist economics, great, whatever. So there is now, I'm going to talk about this because I think you don't particularly want to. There is this strained relationship growing with King Bhumibol Adulyadej. And this has always been the rumor. I don't know how much truth there is, but supposedly this huge growth in popularity for Thaksin worried the king. And he was worried, supposedly, that people were loving Thaksin more than him, you know?
No comment. I don't know.
No comment. Okay. See, whatever. All right. So things started to get a bit tetchy, and on the 20th of July, 2006, around 100 middle-ranking army officers who were supposedly supporters of Thaksin were reassigned by High Army Command. You can see where this is going. And then another army commander gave this interview where he said that Thai politics was below standard and the kingdom's leadership was weak, which is a bit ridiculous seeing as, it's just won this huge majority. And he also said, this isn't a real democracy, it's a false democracy, probably because of this vote buying thing I mentioned earlier. And then in August 2006, reports start coming in of, tanks coming into Bangkok, just around the outskirts, and the military are saying, oh no, it's just a scheduled exercise, stuff like this. And then in September, there's this really kind of weird deep statey kind of story. There was probably an assassination attempt. So the police, who were more on the kind of Taksin side than the military, they arrested 5 members of Thai counter-insurgency squad. And one of the officers had a bomb in a car and was going to blow up Taksin, right? Yeah. And those guys were released after the military took charge. So I'm just throwing that out there. And then on the 19th day of the 9th month of the Buddhist year 2549 at 9:30 p.m. I just want to point out how that's all superstitious good luck, right? At 9:30 p.m, Channel 5 ceased scheduled programming and aired songs written by King Bhumibol. At 11 p.m, the channel came back on air, and Miss Asia 1987 announced that the military and the police had Bangkok and the surrounding areas under their control. So that's kind of where we're up to. Should we call it a day and come back to it next week? Or do you want to say, do you remember the coup?
Yeah, I do. I was sitting on the TV and I saw exactly what you just said, the blue screen, and then a General Sonti comes and then telling people about how non-democratic this country is under Taksin's
well, now
government.
It is, yeah. So we should probably call it a day, but I just wanted to say this is really not the end of Taksin's story by any means. That was really chapter maybe 1 and 2, and we'll do chapters 3 and 4 next week, which would be the red shirts, the yellow shirts, and then Yingluck, his sister, enters the fray. So Gong, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And we will see you shortly. Stay tuned, listeners. Bye-bye.
Bye.
1 ตำบล 1 ผลิตภัณฑ์กองทุนเงินล้านสร้างสรรค์ชุมชนเอื้ออาทรบ้านผ่อนคนจนสินทรัพย์ทุกคนแปลงเป็นทุนได้ยางพาราราคาสูงลิบพืชผลแอคทีฟขายดีชื่นใจประชุมเอเปกชื่อกล้องลือไกลวัฒนธรรมไทยเที่ยวปลอดภัยไทยแลนด์
ไทยรักไทยหัวใจคือประชาชนเลือกพรรคไทยรักไทยต้องเลือกพรรคไทยรักไทยภายใต้การนำของพระท่านนายกรัฐมนตรีพันตำรวจโทดร.ทักษิณชินวัตรหัวหน้าพรรคไทยรักไทยจะสร้างความแข็งแกร่งให้กับประเทศชาติและประชาชน
จะลดรายจ่ายเพิ่มรายได้ขยายโอกาสให้ประชาชนผมเริ่มต้นโครงการ30 บาทรักษาทุกโรคพี่น้องครับผมสัญญาว่าจะพักหนี้เกษตรกรรายย่อย3 ปีพักไปแล้ว2,300,000 คนกองทุนหมู่บ้านละ1 ล้านบาทมีคนใช้บริการทั้งหมด13 ล้านคนมีกว่าจากกองทุน 75,000 กองทุนรักษาให้ดีแล้ว4 ปีข้างหน้ากองทุนหมู่บ้านที่ดีจะถูกเปลี่ยนเป็นธนาคารหมู่บ้านครับอันนี้รวมถึงชุมชนในกรุงเทพด้วยนะครับพี่น้องครับก่อนอื่นต้องขอแสดงความยินดีกับคนไทยทั้งประเทศที่เราร่วมกันปลดแอกหนี้ IMF ก่อนกำหนด2 ปี
พรรคไทยรักไทย